Greetings. Skill-based matchmaking is the thorn in every competent gamer's side, and while there are loads of videos that outline why it sucks, these videos often forego explaining why skill-based matchmaking is in the game to begin with. Actually, that is not entirely true, as most will state that SBMM is a matchmaking system that at its core is designed to pair like-skilled players against like-skilled players. And while there is some truth to that, it is not actually the reason why this iteration of SBMM we see in COD today has been implemented. Let me explain. Proponents who extol the virtues of SBMM believe that it functions as a ranking system of sorts. It seems reasonable, at least from their perspective, that a 0.1 KD player should not go against a 4 KD player in a casual game mode. I disagree a bit, but anyway. Ergo, they believe SBMM is preventing this from occurring, and in a way they are actually correct. However, in an effort to flatten the skill curve, the algorithm will often create matchmaking scenarios where that high-skilled player is paired with very low-skilled players, resulting in losses for that high-skilled player. The algorithm is not static, but dynamic, and considers recent performances and scales accordingly. If there are outliers, then the only way for that algorithm to resolve to one, or flatten, is to introduce scenarios that are designed to either ensure you fail or ensure you succeed, and this happens quite often. Proponents of SBMM extolling its virtues don't quite know how to reconcile these results, and they largely ignore it, brushing it under the carpet as if it doesn't actually happen, which of course it is happening. However, I'm not here today to outline how SBMM is actually working. I will do that in another video. Today I want to give whoever might be unaware or ignorant a slight reality check about SBMM's implementation. In essence, why is it here to begin with? Let us be charitable for a moment, and assume that in its inception, SBMM was designed as a sort of virtuous segregation system. Some might consider that an oxymoron of sorts, but I digress. The idea would be to protect the lowest, most disadvantaged in the COD community from engaging with the most advantaged or the highest skilled. There would be a certain threshold at work here, and chances are it would be quite high. In other words, you would need to be exceedingly bad at the game to qualify for entry. It is likely that a system of this nature has been in COD for quite some time. However, at some point something changed, and analysts noticed an interesting trend. Most of the community who have been around long enough will attest to the fact that matchmaking in Advanced Warfare was probably the moment we saw SBMM toned up slightly. So the question is why? Well, the matchmaking system seemed to work fine in all previous CODs, so why change it now? Well, if you take your mind back to those days, you will be reminded of something else that was introduced in modern gaming, not just COD, but it was this gambling and much maligned loot box system. What does this have to do with SBMM? Well, frankly, everything. Prior to loot boxes, COD Ghosts introduced microtransactions, so there was some sort of pay gate there. I envisage that it was at this time that execs posed a question to those who analyze Call of Duty. The question, in a colloquial and I guess comically evil way, would have been, how do we milk more money out of our customers? The real ask for the data analysts would be to see if there are trends within certain groups of players that indicate profitability more so than other groups. Keep in mind, Activision track everything about their players. They track all the data, and would have done so almost from the very beginning. To be honest, if you don't believe this, it's completely bonkers because every company does this. Rest assured they were and still do today. Upon analysing the vastness of captured data, analysts would have made an interesting correlation. Something to the effect of, there appears to be a strong correlation indicating that players within this SBMM bracket appear to have higher levels of profitability relative to the rest of the community. Naturally, when the execs get wind of this, the order would have been to immediately expand the system. In other words, to start tuning it so that it encompasses more players. For the next few CODs, a certain level of tuning would have occurred, mostly with the mindset to facilitate players spending more on loot boxes. However, as we all know, loot boxes soon became untenable. In gaming in general. Not because gaming corporations had a sudden change of heart and became virtuous overnight, but rather the community outpouring was so great and there were impending legal threats forcing these companies to abandon them en masse. So that was the death of loot boxes. This left only microtransactions as their last way to milk the community. You see, loot boxes were excellent for them. They pay-gated not only visual items, but also competitive items, so in that way they encouraged both casual and competitive players to purchase them. Now they are mostly stuck with visually enhancing microtransactions. Rest assured, if they thought they could get away with pay-gating competitive items again, they would. Though pay-to-win is not entirely gone from COD in some areas of the game, but there you go. The inevitable loss of one of their cash cows leads to tuning their profit system even further, and I'm talking about SBMM here. And wouldn't you know it that in 2019 we saw the first true iteration of SBMM in a form we would recognize today. It is clear that they chose this game, 2019, to test a hypothesis, namely strict SBMM equals profit. I want to make something absolutely clear. Activision would not dare roll out a system that had demonstrable evidence that it would negatively affect their profits. In essence, the data they had gathered so far indicated positive profitability trends. In other words, the data correlation suggested a high probability that their system would succeed. And it did. In actuality, it did beyond their wildest expectations. However, there is a reason for this, and that was largely unforeseen. I am talking about COVID lockdowns, of course. While the rest of the world shuddered under these restrictions, gaming saw a boom, and this no doubt meant a boom in microtransaction purchases. The execs seeing these figures must have been over the moon, as it reinforced every decision they had made, and in the eyes of their shareholders instilled a great deal of confidence in their leadership. Now, of course, so many companies made a classic, if not hilariously short-sighted and dim-witted projection. They took such COVID figures and projected future potential and investments upon them. Just look at Facebook's Meta if you need to understand how utterly stupid this type of expectation is, and, well, still is. Activision would have been no different to a degree. So what does this have to do with SBMM? Well, to put it simply, the data they would have gathered during that period would have directly influenced the trajectory that they are on today. So if SBMM at that time appeared wildly profitable, they would have 100% continued its implementation. And sure enough, they have done just that. Since then, we have seen minor tuning at best. Until today, MW3 rolls by, and it is tuned to the highest level we have ever seen. The point I am making in all of this is that SBMM exists because it is profitable. If it was not profitable, it would be removed overnight. If you believe that SBMM exists as some sort of virtuous system to protect the weak and enhance player experience, well, I commend you for your noble vision of how you believe noble corporations operate, but sadly, the naivety in such sentiments is undeniable. The reality is that SBMM exists to manipulate you, and within that manipulative formula, they have the data that suggests it leads to profit. I would require an entire video to explain how manipulation plays upon human psychology, but for the sake of this video, let us just simplify it. Data does not lie. It is interpretive, but the strong correlation Activisions have made is that your SBMM manipulation leads to profit. And that is the sole reason we see it in modern Call of Duty games. It has absolutely nothing to do with making a fair playing system or enhancing player experience whatsoever. If you believe that, which Activision most certainly wants you to, then you have succumbed to deception. It is likely that this system of SBMM will be in the game for a while still, and considering Activision's reticence to acknowledge its existence or even speak about it is entirely indicative of a corporation that knows their system would be viewed as nefarious if the truth was revealed. That said, the reality of SBMM is slowly becoming more and more realized. That is, more realized in the general Call of Duty community. And increasingly, that attitude is actually turning negative. The ones that still support it appear more and more ignorant as the SBMM hate train gathers steam. To put it simply, it requires Olympic levels of intellectual gymnastics to qualify SBMM as a positive system, and even in the most opaque echo chamber these curious SBMM supporters find themselves, it is almost impossible to deny the reality that monetization is the priority for Activision and not player experience. The takeaway from this video is that if you don't like SBMM, you are completely justified in that belief. It is a system that has, at least in the way it has been implemented, a complete lack of virtue. If the anti-SBMM train gathers enough steam and it starts to actually affect not only perception of Call of Duty but its profitability, and I would argue that it actually is now, then be assured it will be toned down at some point, if not removed entirely. The sad part is that Activision will say, oh, we listened to the community and acted according to what the community desired. In reality, they listened to their profits and did the bare minimum to secure its future potential. Anyway, that's all for today. I'll see you next time.